Hello. In the Lamrim Chimmo, at the last couple chapters in the first volume, they talk about ethical conduct and the three higher trainings. And there's one short paragraph in there that I wanted to talk about today that is so helpful to think about. I've recently used this more successfully than in the past. It's the four ways that ethical errors occur. And it's nice to memorize this little list. I'll say those first so you can think about them, and then I'll explain them. Not knowing, lack of respect, carelessness, and strong afflictions. And the reason I appreciate this teaching most recently is because I've noticed that when my mind is afflicted and I'm aware of it, and it's just like I'm not dispelling it easily, I can kind of go through this list and see like, okay, what is really happening here that I'm not, what's going on? And I find it to be a useful reflection in that way. The not knowing part is like if you don't really know what you should adopt and abandon, or don't know what precepts you've taken or things like that. We have to learn about things and know things before we can reduce our ethical or improve our ethical conduct. And for myself personally, I would say that when I first met the Dharma formally, both Venerable Chodron and my teachers at the Sakya Monastery both really emphasized that memorizing the 10 destructive actions and reflecting on them. And for me, there was a lot of not knowing I had before that about how to actually maybe think about these actions that we don't want to do. I always kind of laugh and say, yeah, I know stealing is wrong, but when I was a kid, I just thought as long as you don't get caught, it's okay. That's a kind of not knowing in the sense of your view about it is maybe childish. So, yeah, it's important to know what we need to practice and what we need to abandon. And so, yeah, you can study and learn these things. And as you reflect on the 10 destructive actions, for me personally, in that time period, I did that for like about 1.5 years daily. And there was a lot of confusion that just naturally fell away from my life, especially around things that society accepts, but you really don't have a good feeling about. And then you see yourself doing them, and then you realize, yeah, that's really not appropriate. Like maybe using the copy machine at work for your own personal things, things like that. So I found that helpful. And then recently, I learned a lot more about lack of respect, because I had always thought about the other ones, especially strong afflictions, the fourth one. And I hadn't really thought about lack of respect. And I was thinking in the last few months that I'm lacking respect, and I'm seeing that in my mind. And when I read this and I realized, oh, I'm not really understanding well enough the disadvantages and the advantages of things. I haven't really educated myself well enough. I know them maybe on the surface, but I haven't really respected these things that I need to adopt and abandon fully. And so that is one nice way to think about lack of respect, because it's much more doable than just like, I should respect this. There's like, what's the doable thing there? Here you can look at the advantages of something, the disadvantages, and like contemplate them more deeply and really develop respect for something that maybe that you're lacking. I found that in myself, and I think that's, it helps to have these. This is what I love about the teachings on the Lam Rim and the Dharma is like, how do I get my mind to this place? Well, here's some things that they teach us. And also, when you think about the advantages and disadvantages, when you think about ethical conduct, one of the great advantages is that your mind will be much more peaceful. And the disadvantages is that your mind is going to be like roiled. How would you ever be able to concentrate? You'll always have these things coming up. Different things will come up and disturb your mind. And when your ethics are more in order, then naturally these things will fade away, and you'll have a much more cool mind, a peaceful mind, less disturbances in life. Then you'll have a better ability to handle them, I think. And then the third one is carelessness. And this one, now we know what to adopt and abandon, but we're not really paying attention well enough. We're not using mindfulness of what our behavior should be or speech. I see that in myself, especially with speech. Or we're not monitoring our behavior in general, like, like keeping that little awareness of when we're doing something, how we're doing it, and how should we be doing something. And then with that, another part of that also is not really being tuned in to our sense of self-respect or integrity or consideration for others. If we don't have those factors on board in the mind, then it would be very easy to be careless. So that's important to recognize when, oh wow, this wasn't a moment where my integrity was there, that's good to see. Or I'm not really considering others here. And, so of course it's easy to be careless then because it doesn't seem to matter. And then the last one, which is the one I always had thought about the most in these before, and not so much the first ones, especially the second and the third, but the last one is strong afflictions. And this is recognizing that when our minds can get overpowered by the afflictions, and just giving them their due and really recognizing that, it's easier to put out a match than it is to put out a little fire. It's easier to put out a little fire this size than it is to put out a bonfire. It's easier to put out a bonfire than it is to put out a burning building. So, recognizing the afflictions and the power of them when we don't learn and apply the antidotes. And that, of course, when our minds are just full of afflictions, we can't, like for instance with anger, when you have a lot of anger, your mind is so narrowed down that you really can't access your wisdom very well then. So seeing the difficulty with having strong afflictions will help us to learn about the antidotes to them, and we had many teachings on that. So, yeah, I think mostly I just wanted to share those 4 things: not knowing, lack of respect, carelessness, and strong afflictions, so that we can use them in the moment. You don't have to be on the cushion. You can be just walking, you can be sitting, you can be doing anything. You can recognize that, things aren't going well inside right now. What tools can I use? What's happening in this regard? And this is just another reflection that I think can be beneficial in this way.